You know, that feeling, that kind of heavy sigh
Mm.
happens when you've got a ton of things you could do, maybe. Or maybe absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But somehow nothing feels like it has any point.
Mm-hmm. That restlessness, but also just no drive.
Exactly. This empty sort of blah feeling that just hangs around. Maybe, it felt particularly strong during those weird pandemic lockdown times.
Oh, definitely. That sense of, pointlessness. It's got a name or several. Ennui, deep boredom.
And it's way more than just like needing a hobby.
Absolutely. It's this fundamental discomfort. The sources talk about a dullness inside, a soul that's just torpid, a mind that can't settle.
Right. So today, that's our mission in this deep dive. We want to unpack this really uncomfortable, often kind of unspoken emotion. We'll look at what philosophers, through history thought it was, what modern psychology is finding out.
And recent studies too, yeah.
And crucially, what the sources suggest we can actually do about it. How do we move through it? How do you reconnect with meaning when that ennui hits?
It's about getting a handle on the whole landscape of this feeling, really, from like ancient thinkers to brand new research and finding some practical ways forward.
Okay, let's dig in. First up, defining it. What does ennui actually feel like? Down on the ground level.
Well, the sources paint quite a picture. Seneca, the Roman Stoic guy, he talked about tedium.
Tedium, okay.
Yeah, a dullness of a soul that lies torpid, he said. Like your mind just can't find anywhere to rest. He called it sad and languid leisure.
Sad and languid leisure.
Yeah.
Wow. That feeling of being stuck, shut down.
Exactly. And the Bay Area CBT source puts it as this persistent sense of emptiness, listlessness, and detachment. Something that can, dull your days and drain your purpose.
Dull your days, yeah, that really nails it. It's so vivid. And philosophers, they tried to pin it down more abstractly too, didn't they? Like get to its essence.
Oh, for sure. Schopenhauer, always the cheerful one. He called it a tame longing without any particular object.
You want something, but you don't know what.
Right, and Bertrand Russell saw it as a thwarted desire for events.
Yeah.
Like your mind isn't busy enough, and you're comparing your dull reality to, all the more exciting things you could be doing.
Mm-hmm. And William James just called it a protest against the entire present.
Yeah, basically rejecting everything happening right now. Intense.
It is intense, and some philosophers took it even further, right? Seeing it almost as experiencing nothingness itself.
Precisely. Thinkers like Kierkegaard, Heidegger, they really dove into the existential side. They saw it as this pervasive emptiness. Kierkegaard's description is powerful, seeing it as sort of universal but empty. And Heidegger called it a fundamental attunement, like a basic mood of being human that shows us emptiness is just part of reality.
Okay, this is sounding quite heavy, and maybe for some people listening, a bit like depression. It's really important we distinguish ennui from clinical depression, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they can feel kind of similar on the surface.
That's a critical point, absolutely. And the sources are pretty clear here.
Yeah.
Ennui involves that dissatisfaction, that lack of interest, yeah. But it's often more temporary, more tied to your situation.
Okay.
The Bay Area CBT source points this out with ennui. You might feel bored, listless, but if something genuinely engaging pops up, like a new project or something unexpected happens,
Your interest comes back.
likely, yeah, your interest can flicker back on. Ennui makes tasks feel hard, heavy, like you're pushing through mud maybe, but usually not impossible.
So it's more about the situation not grabbing you versus something deeper and more constant.
Exactly. Depression is, it's a much more intense, pervasive, chronic state. We're talking deep, persistent sadness, a profound hopelessness, not being able to feel pleasure in anything that's anhedonia. And often lots of self-blame comes with it. With depression, tasks don't just feel difficult, they often feel genuinely impossible, overwhelming. Ennui might shift if your circumstances change or you find something new to engage with. Depression is a clinical condition. It needs professional help, treatment. Even though historically some philosophers kind of blurred the lines with melancholy, modern psychology sees them as distinct, though, they can overlap, or ennui could be a symptom or even lead to depression.
That clarity is super helpful. It really is a different beast. Okay, so this feeling, this pointlessness or deep boredom, it's not new. It has this incredibly long history in philosophy. Where does it first kind of crop up?
Well, you can see hints of it way back in ancient texts. Like the author of Ecclesiastes, people often say it was Solomon, really wrestles with the vanity, the futility of life. But interestingly, his advice is basically live fully anyway. Do it with gusto.
So, okay, life might be pointless in the grand scheme, but embrace it with everything you've got. That feels like a really defiant way to face ennui.
It kind of does, right? Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Then much later, you have Seneca again, observing that tedium pops up when the mind, which he saw as naturally active, is just left idle, not engaged in practical stuff.
And that leads to melancholy.
Yeah, and his fix. Pretty straightforward. Work in action. Keep the mind busy, give it direction.
Keep busy, keep the boredom away.
Yeah.
Simple? Maybe, but it still resonates. What about the Middle Ages? Did it show up then?
Ah, yes. That's where we get the concept of acedia, especially in monasteries. It was seen as a kind of spiritual boredom or sloth, like finding God's world or your spiritual duties just boring.
Wow.
And that was seen as a real problem ethically, almost a spiritual failure.
Boredom as a sin. So shifting gears. Pascal, he had a really provocative take, didn't he? Almost dramatic.
Oh, completely. Pascal's famous argument was that boredom ennui is actually the natural state for humans if they don't have God or constant distractions.
Wait, our natural state?
Yeah. He believed we're desperate for diversions, entertainment, work, anything, just to avoid facing the emptiness inside when we're alone with our thoughts.
So distractions are just papering over the crack.
For Pascal, yes. Temporary fixes. He thought only a connection with the infinite, with God, could truly fill that void.
Okay, hang on. Our default setting is boredom. Unless we're glued to our phones or, divinely connected, that's a pretty intense starting point.
It definitely reframes things. Kant, he also linked boredom to inactivity, much like Seneca, saw it affecting idle people. His solution, also straightforward. Activity, work, or recreation.
Just get up and do something. Schopenhauer, though. He really dialed up the bleakness factor with boredom, didn't he?
Schopenhauer is crucial here. For him, life was just this miserable pendulum swing. You're either suffering from needing something, desire, or you're suffering from boredom because you have nothing left to desire.
So wanting things makes us miserable, and not wanting things also makes us miserable. Sounds like a lose-lose.
He wasn't exactly Mr. Sunshine. He defined boredom straight up as the sensation of the worthlessness of existence.
Oof.
And here's where it gets really wild and controversial. He suggested boredom might actually be proof that existence is worthless. His logic was, if life had real value, wouldn't just being be enough? Wouldn't it be engaging?
Wow, that's profoundly bleak.
Right.
And he had that bizarre idea linking boredom to intelligence. That seems totally backward.
It does, doesn't it? He speculated that animals don't feel much boredom, but among humans, your capacity for boredom is directly linked to how intelligent you are.
Seriously.
Yeah. His idea was that only a really complex, varied world could keep a genius interested, and, well, the actual world is often too simple, too mundane. People easily content. He saw them as less intelligent.
Ouch. So if you're deeply bored, maybe you're just too smart for this world. That totally clashes with the idea that smart people are always buzzing with thoughts. How did he even justify that?
His argument was basically, the richer your inner world, the more stimulation you need from the outside to match it. A simpler mind finds novelty everywhere. A complex mind burns through the superficial stuff quickly and craves something deeper, which is hard to find. And he didn't see boredom as just, a mild annoyance. He called it a serious scourge. Thought it could drive people to desperate acts, even war or suicide, just to escape how heavy it felt.
Whoa, from nothing to do to starting wars. Okay, but Thoreau had pretty much the opposite idea about intelligence, didn't he?
A total contrast, yeah. Thoreau agreed ennui was ancient, as old as Adam, he said, but he saw it as a sign of less intelligence, of being kind of mentally or spiritually asleep.
Asleep.
Yeah. He argued that an alert, truly intelligent mind finds endless fascination in tiny details, a mosquito buzzing, life in a pond. For Thoreau, you're only bored if you're not paying enough attention to the richness that's already there.
Okay, so boredom as a failure of attention, not a sign you're superior. That's a fundamental clash with Schopenhauer. What about Kierkegaard? He famously called boredom the root of all evil. Right.
He did use that phrase, yeah, though maybe partly for effect. Kierkegaard saw boredom as this pervasive nothingness, sure. But paradoxically, he thought this very emptiness was a powerful, almost magical driver for action.
Magical. How so?
It's this repulsive feeling, but it pushes you to do something, anything, just to fill that void. And then in another weird twist, he kind of saw it as a status symbol for the elite. He suggested those who bore themselves are the chosen ones, the nobility.
Boredom is a mark of distinction. That's unique.
Nietzsche connected boredom to a few things. He thought it could drive asceticism, intense self-discipline maybe as a way to fight the feeling. He even had this fascinating interpretation of a biblical idea suggesting maybe God created the world partly out of boredom. And like Schopenhauer, He sometimes linked boredom to vitality, to seeing your deepest self, implying that if you constantly avoid boredom, maybe you're avoiding important truths about yourself.
So it could actually lead to self-discovery by forcing you to look.
Potentially, yeah, by making you confront what's really going on under the surface when the distractions stop. But he also clearly found it undesirable. He asked, is not life 100 times too short? Bore ourselves.
Good question.
And he made that dry comment about education, often teaching us to put up with boredom through duty, doing things because you have to, not because they're interesting.
Beauty. The ultimate boredom endurance training. Okay, moving into the 20th century. Bertrand Russell. He had some relatable points, especially comparing modern boredom to the past.
Yeah, Russell wrote about boredom in The Conquest of Happiness. He stuck with his definition, thwarted desire for events. But his really interesting angle was arguing that, objectively, we might actually have less raw boredom today than people did in, say, pre-tech farming societies.
Less.
Think about it, a farmer centuries ago. Incredibly repetitive work, long, isolated evenings, minimal entertainment. Modern jobs can be tedious, sure, but we generally have more social contact, endless leisure options, constant stimulation available.
That feels totally counterintuitive. We feel overwhelmed by choice and still get bored. We usually blame modern life for boredom.
Right. And that was Russell's key insight. The amount of objective boredom might be less, but our tolerance for it has plummeted. We're much more afraid of being bored than our ancestors were. We kind of expect life to be constantly exciting.
Ah, okay. The expectation has changed.
Exactly. And he made that crucial distinction. A quiet life that maybe looks boring from the outside can be deeply joyful for the person living it. That's different from a life that feels genuinely internally boring to the person experiencing it. It's the inner state that counts.
That makes total sense. It's not the appearance, it's the feeling. And Heidegger, he kept going with this idea of boredom as a fundamental mood.
Yes. Heidegger saw deep boredom long while as this profound mood or attunement that reveals basic truths about existence, about being itself. He distinguished everyday boredom, like waiting for a train, from this deeper existential kind, which he thought is usually hidden or asleep because we're so caught up in busyness and distractions.
But why would you want to wake up that deep, possibly depressing sense of nothingness? What's the point?
Well, Heidegger argued that profound boredom strips away all the superficial meanings we plaster onto things. It lets reality appear more nakedly, maybe. And confronting that emptiness, that nothingness, he suggested, could actually lead to a strange kind of calm joy. He even provocatively claimed, philosophy is born in the nothingness of boredom.
Philosophy born from boredom. Wow.
In that state, he thought we also experience time differently, more authentically, not just as seconds ticking by, but as a real presence.
Okay, so boredom is a potential gateway to, like, fundamental truth, philosophy, even a deeper sense of time. That's a major reframe from just feeling blah. It's clear philosophers have wrestled with this for ages. What about modern psychology and recent research? Especially those studies you mentioned. What do they tell us about how boredom actually impacts us today?
Yeah, recent research often looks at something called boredom proneness. It's seen as a personality trait. Some people just tend to experience boredom more often, more intensely.
Okay.
And the pandemic, obviously, with all the lockdowns and isolation, gave researchers a unique chance to study this. Lots of people reported that general blah feeling, right?
Oh, yeah. Forced quiet, routine, totally upended.
Exactly. So one significant study during that time found that being high in boredom proneness was strongly linked to worse well-being outcomes. We're talking more negative feelings, more depression, anxiety, stress, lower self-esteem.
So if you were easily bored, you generally felt worse during lockdown.
That's what the correlation showed, yeah. It was also linked to what they called a failure to launch into action, finding it hard to get started on things. And interestingly, maybe even lower adherence to public health rules, like social distancing.
Less likely to follow the rules if you were bored.
That was the suggestion from the data. And crucially, the research also highlighted that people high in boredom proneness often feel this unfulfilled need for meaning in their lives.
Ah, so it connects back to those existential ideas.
Exactly. It suggests boredom can be a really strong signal that something deeper feels missing or disconnected for you.
Okay, so before we jump into what we can do about it, let's just revisit something that came up with Schopenhauer and Heidegger. Is boredom ever actually valuable? Is there an upside?
That's a really important question, because while it feels awful, some thinkers definitely saw potential value there. Like we said, Schopenhauer linked it, controversially, to intelligence pushing the mind to seek something deeper. Nietzsche hinted it could reveal your deepest self. Heidegger saw it as a past fundamental truth, maybe even the birthplace of philosophy. It can basically act as a big, flashing warning sign that your current path isn't working for you.
Like a wake-up call.
Yeah, prompting introspection. It forces you to face that emptiness, which is uncomfortable, sure, but it can also clarify what you really care about. It's like your mind hits a dead end and has to either look inward or figure out a totally new direction.
So, not just a negative thing to escape, but maybe a painful but necessary signal. Even a catalyst for change.
Exactly. It can strip away the fluff and make you ask the bigger questions.
That's a powerful reframe. Okay, now for the really practical bit. If we find ourselves stuck in this ennui, this deep boredom, what do the sources suggest we can actually do? How do we navigate through it? Creativity came up big in that pandemic study, right?
Yes, and this was such an encouraging finding. That study found people who actually increased how much they did everyday creative stuff during lockdowns. Well, they reported significantly higher well-being.
Higher well-being, like how?
Better self-esteem, more optimism, more positive feelings generally, and crucially, lower scores on the negative stuff, depression, anxiety, negative affect, and boredom proneness itself.
Wow. And you said everyday creativity. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be Picasso.
Absolutely not. That's the key takeaway. The studies stress it's not about being a pro artist or making amazing things. It's the simple stuff. Baking something new, gardening, making a card for someone, doodling, writing a silly limerick, trying a new recipe, arranging some flowers, knitting.
Anything where you're making something new, using your own ideas.
It's exactly putting something out there from your own mind and hand.
And why does that seem to help so much with this feeling of pointlessness?
The researchers think it's about reestablishing a sense of agency, control. When your external freedom feels limited, like in a lockdown or even just stuck in a dull job, creating something, anything, gives you back a feeling of influencing your little corner of the world. It also encourages playfulness, inspiration, doing something just because you enjoy doing it. That's intrinsic motivation. It helps you make meaning in a small, concrete way.
That link to agency really clicks. Taking back a bit of power when you feel powerless. Okay, another path mentioned was mindfulness.
Right. From a Buddhist viewpoint, boredom is often seen as one of the main things causing suffering, like a poison for the mind, along with things like anger and greed.
The poison, okay.
And the antidote they offer is often about paying closer attention. Mindfulness.
Like in the movie Groundhog Day. That analogy in the sources really helped me get it.
It's a perfect example. Bill Murray's character is stuck in the exact same boring day over and over. He doesn't escape by changing the day itself.
He changes how he pays attention to the day.
Precisely. He starts noticing tiny details, other people's lives, the subtle shifts. The core idea is that life, even when it looks monotonous, is actually always changing, always full of small details, impermanence. Mindfulness practice helps train your brain to notice this by gently bringing your awareness back to the present moment, the here and now, again and again, finding fascination even in what seems mundane.
So actively training your attention to find interest right now, even right now, feels incredibly dull.
Yes, and it takes practice. Patience. Being kind to yourself when your mind wanders off into, I'm so bored, or things should be different. It's about building a new relationship with this present moment.
Okay, creativity, mindfulness. And then there's this idea of consciously creating meaning, which connects back to that research finding, right? That boredom proneness is linked to needing more meaning.
Yeah, the meaning movement source frames that empty, meaningless feeling not as some kind of failure, but maybe as a signal, like something deeper is trying to get your attention. Facing that void, that boredom, can actually be the first step towards finding, or rather creating, real meaning. It forces you to look inward. What do you actually value? What are you passionate about? Who are you connected to? It lets you question the old expectations, maybe the societal pressures that got you feeling stuck, and start rebuilding from a more authentic place.
So seeing the emptiness not as a pit, but maybe as a blank slate, an opportunity.
Exactly. It frees you up from following old scripts that clearly weren't making you happy. The advice is often to start small. What naturally pulls your attention, even just a tiny bit?
Like what?
What activities make you lose track of time? What did you love doing as a kid before you worried about being productive or good at it? What tiny moments make you feel even slightly more alive, more connected? The really powerful idea here is that meaning isn't usually something you just stumble upon, like finding a lost wallet. It's something you actively create through your choices, your actions, where you put your attention.
That shift From passively hoping to find meaning to actively building it. That feels like a game changer. Okay, lastly, what about getting help? Seeking professional support. When does ennui maybe cross a line or signal something more serious is going on?
This is absolutely crucial. Both the meaning movement and the Bay Area CBT source really stress seeking professional help if these feelings are sticking around, if they feel severe, if they involve thoughts of self-harm.
Or lead to unhealthy coping.
Exactly, like excessive drinking or drug use, or if it leads to you just isolating yourself completely, unable to function.
Because, like we discussed, while ennui is distinct, it can be tangled up with depression or be a symptom of it.
Precisely. Getting a proper assessment from a professional is so important to figure out what's really going on under the hood. Therapy can offer specific tools, strategies tailored to you, help you reconnect with emotions, figure out underlying patterns, and find ways to rebuild that sense of meaning and motivation, especially if you feel totally shut down or paralyzed by it. Reaching out for help isn't weakness. It's incredibly wise, it's strong, especially when you're dealing with these tough internal states.
That's such an important point to end on. Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. Ennui, this ancient, really complex human feeling of pointlessness, deep boredom. It's distinct from clinical depression, but sometimes related. We've traced its philosophical journey, seen how modern research looks at its impact, especially boredom proneness. And we've explored some really powerful ways to navigate it.
Right. The sources seem to guide us towards understanding the feeling first, definitely, but then crucially, shifting from just passively suffering it to actively engaging with the world around you, engaging with your own mind through mindfulness, engaging in the act of creating meaning in your life.
Yeah, the core takeaway feels like it's about that shift. Moving from that state of lack or thwarted desire, as Russell put it, to active engagement, focused attention, conscious creation, whether that's through simple creative acts or training mindful attention on right now or actively building meaning or knowing when it's time to get professional support.
Yeah.
It seems like facing that emptiness, surprisingly, can actually be the catalyst, the thing that sparks real positive change, a deeper connection to yourself, maybe even to the world.
It forces the question, doesn't it? And then it forces the search for an answer.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you listening to mull over as we wrap up. Given that boredom, this ennui, is something pretty much all of us bump into sometimes, what if, instead of that instant reaction to run from it, fill every single second? What if you occasionally just let yourself sit with it, just for a bit? Could training your attention, like that mindfulness idea suggests, maybe help you start spotting little moments of fascination? Subtle details in the everyday stuff you usually ignore, even just for a few minutes. What tiny everyday step, maybe a simple creative action, maybe just a conscious moment of really looking at something, could you take today to push back against that feeling of pointlessness? And start building just a little more presence, a little more meaning.